Hi, Paul Coker here from onebloodydrop.com. I'm really excited. Today I'm here at the Bristol Royal Infirmary and I'm talking to Dr. Rob Andrews about diabetes and exercise. And in this short video we're going to be talking about how you manage your type 1 diabetes after aerobic exercise. So Dr. Andrews, you've shared some incredible knowledge with us in the previous two videos about how you manage your diabetes before aerobic exercise and during aerobic exercise. So for those that haven't seen the previous two videos, can you give us just a very quick introduction of your background and expertise in diabetes and exercise, please?
So I'm Rob Andrews. I'm a consultant at Taunton Hospital where I take care of people with type 1 diabetes. As part of that, I run specialist clinics for people who are either training for new events they've never done before, so marathons, Ironman, or for people who are taking exercise to the next level, so either semi-elite, elite, or champions, and give them advice about how to manage their diabetes when they're exercising. And to try and help make sure I give better and better evidence every year, we have a team that do research to try and get that evidence that's better targeted for those people.
Excellent. So Dr. Andrews, your expertise has already helped me today in these videos. I'm learning new things, which is incredible because I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 40 years. I've done all kinds of crazy exercises and you're giving me some new nuggets as we're sitting here and talking about how I can improve my diabetes management and my measurement of my blood glucose levels. So your knowledge it's astounding. So thank you very much for being here with us and for sharing with us. And the question in this video is how do you manage or how should people manage their blood glucose levels after an aerobic exercise event? We spoke on the previous video and you talked about exercise being like a credit card, so perhaps that would be a good starting point.
Yeah, so there are two things that you have to think about when you're finished your exercise. One of them is how much energy you've burnt and how you're going to replenish that. And the two reasons for replenishing it is that one, I think people forget why you do the training. So the reason why you're doing the training is to increase your glycogen stores. So you've got readily easier glucose available, and that means that because the glucose is the best thing to burn when you're doing exercise, that you can run faster and longer. And the more you have a build-up of that, then the faster and longer you can run. But in order to build that up, you need to eat because you've burnt it. And what happens after you finish the exercise is the body signals and says, actually you did lots of work, I want to store more. But you only get an hour afterwards in order to increase those stores. So if you don't eat within an hour after exercise, you don't get the benefits of increasing your glycogen from training. And we quite often see that with patients who say, I've had a ceiling effect since I've got diabetes. Actually, I've had a ceiling effect. My times don't get better and everyone else I train with, they get better. And the main problem there is you're not eating within the hour and eating the right things. And that's why dietitians are really important. And if you said to me, what's the things to eat afterwards, what you need to be doing is eating in a ratio of 4:1, 4 carbohydrates to 1 protein, and the ideal kind of things are milkshakes, things like that afterwards. So it's nutrition, thinking about how you're going to get back. And then the other thing you've got to think about is, how have I affected the way my insulin works? And we know that when you do an exercise, that you become more sensitive to that insulin. So there's two ways of managing that more sensitivity. One of them is that you reduce the amount of insulin you're going to take over the period afterwards. Or you say, I don't want to reduce that because actually I want to build up my thing. So you have to have more calories. So you're having more calories per amount of insulin. So you have to eat more. Okay,
so for me, I find that after I've done a half marathon, that my blood glucose levels are typically going to be dropping in the window of 8 to 12 hours after a half marathon. Is that common, and what can we do to prevent?
Yeah, so that's really common. So what happens is that your hormones that protect you and try and push up your glucose go up during the exercise, and then they stay up for 6 hours afterwards to help the remodeling, to help you to get the glucose back into the right places and build up your glycogen stores. And then at 6 to 8 hours, they fall away. So at that point, you get all the effect of the exercise on your insulin sensitivity. And so from 6 hours onwards is the likely point when you are likely to to actually for your glucose to fall. So you've got two ways of managing that. One is that you have to eat quite frequently and kind of snack to keep that up. And part of that's what we talked about with the credit card is the body asking for more calories back again. Or the other way that you can do is reduce your insulin. And again, for a starting point, we have across exercise, we have this thing called 50-50, 50-20 rule. So it's 50% reduction if you're exercising before. Afterwards, you take 50% of what you would normally take for 2 meals, and you take 50% of your correction if you find your blood sugars are up. And if you're exercising after 4 o'clock in the evening, or you've done an exercise that's been longer than an hour and a half, or very high intensity training, then you reduce your background overnight by 20%.
Excellent. So that was the 50-50, 50-20. Excellent. I like that. That's a really useful thing. And actually, you were talking about after 4 o'clock in the evening. So my own strategy of running is that my preferred time to run is in the morning, when I've already mentioned in a previous video I'm insulin resistant. There's another part to that strategy that I run then, because I know that the 8 to 12 hour window when I'm going to be most likely to experience a low blood glucose level because of my exercise, I'm awake. Whereas if I'm doing that at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, chances are I'm going to be asleep. And so that also is an important thing. If you're exercising in the evening, how do you actually prevent that nocturnal hypoglycemia, which is of course the most dangerous form?
Yeah, so as you say, what we try and say to people is it's a reduction in 20%, or it's have some food. So you've got a choice, and again that depends what's happening with your body weight and whether you're trying to build or whether you're trying to lose weight. If you don't want to reduce the insulin, then what you need to have is a carbohydrate that's with some protein. So the protein makes the carbohydrate last much longer overnight, and that's what you're wanting to do. And if you said what trials have there been, the things that have been found in trial are Special K, so cereal, milk, or porridge are the two things that tend to protect. It's worth mentioning that unfortunately the blood sugar that you have before you go to bed is not predictive as to whether you're going to have a low. There is no correlation. So if it's 10, it doesn't mean you've got a little chance. If it's 4, it's not a chance. So if it's something that is new to you, or something that's been really quite intense, there is no other way around unless you've got a continuous glucose monitor. You've got to set the alarm clock and check it at 2 and check it at 4.
And if I had been out and done some aerobic exercise at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'm going to bed and I'm sitting there with a blood glucose level of 10, should I think about correcting that, or should I think about leaving it?
We would suggest don't correct a 10, and what we tend to say is add 4 to your correction. So if you normally would have corrected at 10, don't correct to your 14. Give yourself a bit of space that the correction isn't going to make you fall overnight.
Brilliant, excellent. There's some incredible information there again, Dr. Andrews, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. What would be your key message to people in terms of managing their diabetes after aerobic exercise? Your
testing is king. So make sure that you monitor the blood sugar after, particularly overnight if you've done events that you haven't done before or intense events.
And I agree with that completely. In fact, in terms of diabetes and exercise, testing is king before exercise, during exercise and after. And it's not just the testing, it's actually the recording of those results and what was actually happening on that day during that exercise session, what the weather was like, what you'd eaten, and actually the compilation of all of that data then starts to give you a basis on which to actually make the fine adjustments that you need to make for your own personal goals and ambitions in terms of exercise.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add to that recording is record how you felt on the event. So there's something called the Borg scale, which tells you how hard it was. So one of the prime things we get from people is that quite a lot of runners always do the same run. They like the same run. And they say, one time I do the run and my blood sugars go down, and another time I do the runs and they go up, and I do exactly the same time of day. Why is that? Well, if you are a runner, you'll know that occasionally you have good days and occasionally you have bad days. You have a day when you're flying and it's very easy, and if you're flying and it's very easy, then you're not stressed, you don't produce the hormones. And you have other days when actually it's tough, and when it's tough, you produce the stress hormones, so your blood sugars tend to go up. So if you keep a record of how hard it was, then you get an idea of which way it goes depending on how hard it is. And then in the event, if you're doing cycling or a long event, then you know what's happening to your blood sugar at each of those time points.
Thanks, Dr. Andrews. You've shared some incredible insights and some information there with us in those three videos about aerobic exercise. In the next videos, we're going to be talking about anaerobic exercise and how that's different from aerobic exercise and what changes and challenges that presents to managing diabetes. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next video.